Marketing That Works is the podcast for business owners who want to move their brand forward so that they can bring in more sales and clients. I'm Danielle Harris, and I'm bringing you what I know from more than 12 years of experience in traditional and online marketing. I have created marketing strategies for businesses of all sizes, from multi-million-dollar corporations to early-stage online businesses. Remember, some marketers chase fads. I believe in mastering the fundamentals. You're sitting on content gold. And I'm not being overly dramatic here. Anyone who knows me well knows that I am not one to be overly dramatic. But you, right now, have so much content gold you're sitting on that can be working right now to get you your next client. Now, as a coach and entrepreneur, you're constantly being told to create more content to attract clients. And then you're told all these hacks and tips to make sure that more people are going to see your content on whatever platform that you're on. And sure, some of these tips are going to work to get you more views or shares, but what you really want is your next client. So what if I told you you already had exactly what you need to get those clients? No new algorithm hacks required. I'm talking about your sales calls. And not just the sales calls where you got that paid client into your coaching program. I'm talking about all of them. The ones that said yes on the call, but then ended up being a no. The ones where your gut said it was a no, and then you were right, they never came back. Or the ones where they had to go check with their husbands first, and then back and forth, and it just kind of fizzles out. All of those sales calls, all of that is gold, and it can be used to create content that will get you your next client. So in today's episode, I'm going to break down not only why you should be reviewing your sales calls, but how to actually pick out the parts of those calls that can be used as content. Now, I love suggesting looking at your sales calls because there is nothing like being able to read body language on a video sales call. You lose a sense of tone when you're messaging back and forth in the DMs. You miss out on that hint of hesitation. You miss out on those micro expressions of intrigue when you explain a concept that it's just like, ooh, that's interesting. And it kind of changes their mind. Now, don't get me wrong. Those DMs are also gold. But I'm talking about the difference between a gold nugget and a gold bar. And these sales calls are gold bars. And it's because of how you're able to read people because of them. Now, my first tip, do a sales call. If you're not doing them already, please start doing that. And mostly get a program like Fathom or Grain to record those with consent, always with consent. Get people's permission to do that. And I like using one of these types of platforms because you're able to record the calls and get a transcript. And it just makes it so much easier to be able to pull out key concepts and ideas to turn into content. So, now you know to do sales calls, you know to record the sales calls. That's simply not enough. That's not the whole episode for today. What I actually want us to focus on is what to look for as you're rewatching these sales calls. And really, it boils down to three things. You're looking for your potential clients' problems, their questions, and why they're on the call with you in particular. So let's focus on the first one, the potential client's problem. This one is actually very easy to mess up because we assume we already know someone's problem. If you're a money coach who specializes in saving more, you assume the person is all on the call simply because they need a savings budget. Or if you're a wellness coach and you're like, yeah, they want to lose 20 pounds. But what you're looking for is something deeper, more specific. Let's take me, for example. Clients come to me saying that they want to get clear on their messaging and get more clients. I'd honestly be surprised if they were coming to me for something else because that's all that I talk about in my marketing. But when I'm looking back on my sales calls, I'm looking for more details. I'm not looking for a surface level problem of, I want to book more clients. On these sales calls, I'm looking for the problem that the person desperately wants to have solved. I'm looking for the story of how this person hasn't booked a paid client in 6 months, how they're not sure if starting this business was the best idea, how they've done all of these challenges where they post it every day, but it doesn't seem to be working. That's what I want to know. And I want to know this because that is the problem that prompted them to take action right now. The marketing you create needs to show a solution for today's top problem. Now, one of the things I hear a lot is that, oh, my offer or my service, it's a nice to have. I don't know how to create this urgency feeling. Reviewing these sales calls and picking up on these details is how you turn your seemingly nice to have offer or service into something that is urgently needed. So let's take, for example, a wellness coach. I'm sure that there are a lot of people who would love to get into better shape, right? From that perspective, getting into better shape just feels like a nice to have. But being able to easily pick up your 3-year-old without hearing the snap, crackle, pop of your knees is way more specific. Or not needing to take a few hours off after a park play date, that is a today problem. And that's the type of detail that you need to pick up in your sales calls and then translate those solutions that you have into your marketing. Now, if you're reviewing your sales calls and you realize you don't have those details, then that's your sign to start asking deeper questions while you have sales calls. Now, to really dig into those deeper problems, I want you to ask open-ended questions that get your people to share more details about their specific situation. So, for example, instead of just asking, hey, what brought you on here today? You can ask something like, walk me through what's been going on lately that made you realize that you needed some help. Or can you share a recent example of when this problem really impacted you? You really want them to paint a picture that's so vivid that will reveal all of those juicy details that you can then turn into compelling content. Now, when you have those types of details, I want you to write them down in as much detail as possible. Remember, go back to that Grain or that Fathom app and pull out those aspects from the transcript. And what I want you to do is I want you to put them into a database. I do this all the time for my clients in Airtable, but use whatever that you have. And really what I want you to do is use that as the basis for your content ideas. I want you, based off of this, to start brainstorming. So for me and my person who hasn't had a client in 6 months, I'd want to create content like, do this if you haven't booked a sales call in more than a month. Or I'd create another piece of content that was like, oh, here's a story about how a client of mine went through a client drought, and here's the work that we did together to get her new clients. And then I'd maybe make another post about how to get people who are watching your content to actually take action and book a sales call, right? All of these things are very much grounded and rooted in the issue that was presented in front of me on this call of, I have not been able to book a call in 6 months. See, like it's very grounded, very particular. And the goal here, as you're reviewing your sales calls, is to see like, how can I come up with at least 3 ideas per situation? One sales call alone usually has at least 2 to 3 situations that you can pull from, which means that if you have 3 ideas per situation, that's over a half dozen. So now that you know how to uncover the real issues driving your audience, the next thing you want to look for are the questions or concerns that they have. Whenever I get asked a question on a sales call, I am so thankful because I know that my next batch of content is going to get so much better because of it. That's because the questions that show up usually have an opportunity for us to be a lot more nuanced in the answers that we're giving. Now, this reminds me of when I announced a brand new service I was offering to my clients. This is where I would look at sales calls, onboarding forms, testimonials of clients, and put them all into a database to make it super easy to create effective content. I created content that showed all the benefits of this. I talked about how my clients always booked more clients whenever they looked back on their own data, all of this stuff. And when I got on a call with someone to talk more about this offer, I got so excited with their questions because I knew that these questions would help me talk about this offer in greater detail, more nuance, and address the things that were on people's minds when they were considering buying. Now, I got questions like, how much can I send to you? Or I got questions about like, oh, what if I'm changing my offer? Should I still do this? So when you're looking at your own sales calls, I want you to document those questions. And I also want you to document the statements and concerns also. Because one of the things that came up for me as I was doing my sales calls was, oh, I've only worked with 3 or 4 clients. That's a statement. That's not really a question. And really, it was a concern that someone had to see if they were actually a good fit. Those are all the types of things I want you to be looking for as you go through your own sales calls. Answering both direct questions and those statements that are really concerns should be one of the top things that you do in your content. Remember, I was reviewing a client sales call, and the person that my client was talking to assumed that my client only worked with people at a certain income level, which was not true. They didn't ask it as a question, it was more of a offhanded comment. And as I was reviewing that sales call, I noted several content ideas that would come through and address that assumption. Because if one person had that thought and had that thing flit through their head, chances are others did also. And while my client addressed the misunderstanding on the call, she could have easily dismissed it as a one-off question that, it was just that one person that thought that. But as I was looking through this call, I saw this as a chance to make sure that this misunderstanding gets answered beyond the sales call. As you're looking through your own sales calls, this is what I want you to be looking for. Direct questions being asked about working with you, the process, the results, and I also want you to notice statements, assumptions, and concerns that are brought up. From direct questions like, what's the return on the investment of working with you, to those almost offhanded comments of like, my husband will have thoughts about that. Having those things documented and then reflecting that in your content is going to be huge. Doing this doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be as simple as one sentence in your caption or one point in a podcast episode. So I usually recommend doing this 3-part formula. Restate the question or concern, validate why it's a reasonable thing to wonder about, and then provide a perspective or a solution. So for example, if you're a wellness coach, you might say something like, a common thing I hear is, I'm not a meal tracking type of person. It makes total sense because that's not something most of us have ever done or have needed to do. Here's how I approach meal tracking. Right? So what you've done is you restated your question or the concern that was brought up. You validated why that's a thing that's natural and that honestly they're so smart of having that thought or concern. And then you're setting up for a solution to how to make sure that that's not a thing that they need to worry about when they work with you. Now, as you're going through this process, one of the things that I hear a lot is, it's going to make my content feel salesy. When the reality is you're simply creating helpful and informative content. You're answering the questions people already have, and answering these questions makes deciding to work with you that much easier. So, you know to dig into people's pressing problems, and I just told you about answering questions. The last thing you need to look for as you review your sales calls is why you? Why are they on a call with you today? For me, I know that there are so many marketing people promoting themselves online. So when someone books a call to work with me, I want to know what made them decide to take time out of their schedule to talk to me. Did I talk about a topic that nobody else was covering? Was someone referring them? Did I share an identity that was similar to theirs? Or was I simply just the first person to pop up? Right? Like these are the things that I want to know and that you should want to know also. Because when you know this, it's going to help you determine how to spend your time marketing. I remember a client who, after looking at sales calls, realized that most of her clients were actually being referred, either by past clients or people who she had some type of connection with, either in a group program or her personal network. Now, my client wanted to spend most of her time on Reels, on Instagram, but her calls were showing her that her personal connections and being active in group programs and just showing up in co-working spaces and stuff, those were the things that were really driving her results. And while when we worked together, we did work on Instagram, I really helped her to develop an intentional strategy behind what was already working for her, showing up in community, and then using Instagram to help reinforce the people she was already making connections with. So as you are looking through your sales calls, I want you to make note of why people got on a sales call with you. Was it a personal story you shared? What exactly was that? Document that, write that down. Now, to suss out why someone booked a call to work with you specifically, listen for comments like, a friend mentioned you helped with XYZ, or I love the story that you shared about whatever it was. And if you notice while looking through your sales calls that you actually have no idea why they decided to work with you, I want you to start asking that question intentionally. And it can be as simple as, I'm curious, what made you decide to book a call with me today? right? Super casual, super simple, not invasive. And the answer to that will reveal if it was some personal connection that brought you two together, or if it was content that really resonated, or your unique expertise, or something else that just really sparked with the person. When you know this type of information, you can start being intentional about that and use that in your content strategy overall. So there you have it, the 3 things you need to look at as you're reviewing your sales calls to start making content that gets you more clients. It's going to be about identifying the pressing problem that people have, addressing their concerns and their questions and their comments, and then learning why it was they wanted to work with you in particular in the first place. And remember, I want you looking at any and all sales calls, not just the ones that got you a new client. I actually want you to spend more time looking at the ones that didn't get you the client, because there's likely something in there that you overlooked that can be gold as you start creating content to get you more clients. With this valuable insight, you can then create content that speaks directly to your audience's pain points and their desires, positioning you as the guide with the perfect solution. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds great, but I'm not actually going to implement this. This takes too much time, or maybe it has been on your to-do list and you're just like, I just never get around to it. Well, that's where my program, The Blueprint, comes in. The Blueprint is my one-on-one marketing and messaging program that helps you make demand by creating content that truly speaks to the needs of your people. And when you work with me, you'll be able to have this exact process done for you. I'll look through your sales calls. I'll pull out the questions. I'll see the patterns of why people want to work with you. Then over the course of 3 months, you'll learn how to turn this information, which has been gathered into an Airtable client database, into content that's actually going to get more sales calls on your calendar. Head to the show notes and book a call to get started with me. And on this call, we'll talk about how you can stop guessing about what should I be doing to get more clients and get people working with me, because you'll know based off of data what you need to do to get your next client. All right, y'all. I'll talk to you next time. If you want more marketing that works right in your inbox, head to the show notes and sign up for the email list. You'll be the first to know how you can work with me on mastering your marketing.